welcome in to the Gaming Discourse. I am Tyler Frater alongside Richard Day the Cruz.
Good morning.
And Chief Engineer Lieutenant Commander Connor Frater, who is not with us today. It is July 22nd, 2021. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at the Gaming Discourse. Go to our YouTube channel, YouTube/Gaming Discourse, where we post videos. Just put out a video for Claire de Lune, a review of Claire de Lune, which I guess I'll talk about a little bit here. Won't get into as much detail as I do in the review. But yeah, that'll be the latest thing. And then I've got a few other things that I'm working on for some time soon. Richard, how you doing? How you been?
Good.
Were we off last week?
We were off last week.
We were off last week. Yeah, because we missed a bunch of news.
Yeah, I know.
And we got more news this week.
So we got to do some picking and choosing.
Yes. I was going to say something. But I had forgotten. Well, no, this is what I was going to say.
Okay.
It seems like we don't, like, we usually... we don't take a lot of weeks off.
No, not normally.
Like we're usually able to make, time.
The important holidays, the two of them.
Sure. But it seems like every time that we miss a week, something happens. I don't know. Maybe that's just selective.
We'd have to go through our podcasts close to like whatever dates that we missed and see what happened during those weeks.
I'm pretty sure that happens though. But anyway, that's boring stuff. What would you? What have you been playing? What do you want to talk about?
Let's see here. I've been playing Returnal. All right.
Okay. Oh man.
And I don't want to worry you. I'm sorry, Tyler. I don't want to worry.
This. Okay.
But I am a bit underwhelmed.
Oh no.
By the latter half of the game.
Okay.
Gameplay wise, absolutely not. It still plays like a dream. The enemy design, world design is just insane. For me, Returnal has the Dark Souls games problem, particularly for Demon Souls, Dark Souls 1 to 3, and then Bloodborne. Not necessarily Sekiro, but and that is the story is not given to you very easily. For the first half of the game, for me, it was. You pick up the audio logs, you figure out what's going on, what's happening. The latter half of the game, you get more obscure flashbacks and audio logs. Like you feel like you're missing stuff, and you also have to keep going back to your computer, and you have to keep reading logs that you've unlocked, and you have to keep a lot of track. You have to keep on top of a lot of things.
And it's on your own? You're not being steered to do these things,
the game is not being steered to do anything.
Okay.
Long story short, I quote unquote beat it.
Sure.
I got credits roll.
Yeah, you got to the end, for lack of a better,
Right. There is no like Control, there was no like fake out like, just kidding. No, that was really cool in Control. It was very cool and it was well done. And I was left with like, well, it
felt a little unfulfilled.
Not even unfulfilled. I was still like, what's going on? Like, what is going on here?
Huh. Okay.
Well, it turns out that I still have to play the game again and not only search for more stuff, but there's still an entire third act that's
good God
hidden behind, like, apparently, depending on how good you are, it could take you like another like 5 to 10, 12 hours to get that.
Oy, okay.
Which I kind of said, no.
You think you're done so?
Yeah. And that's only for the fact that I don't like the carrot's not like slowly like leading me forward. The carrot is being like
just tugged away,
yanked, as I'm like crawling through like the little goat head like splinter thing.
Oh yeah, those suck. As someone who grew up in rural Arizona, yes, those suck.
Yeah, they do, and I love Return. I still love it. Like I said, atmosphere, enemy design, the gameplay is still phenomenal. It's just you're not giving me a very good motivation to finish this.
Interesting. Okay. I totally understand. Not having played the game, I totally understand what you're saying, because that's a common problem with roguelikes. And Hades, one of the great things about Hades was that Hades just nailed every single aspect. And one of those aspects is, like well, I want to know what's up with this god, and then you find that out, and then there's another fold, another mystery, something else you unlock, like little tiny things that just keep driving you forward.
Yeah, and it is like I said, discouraging because one run you could just happen upon the right pathway to find what you need, and then other runs you can just like not find any story like whatsoever, like through the audio logs or whatnot. So, so yeah, it's a bit rough, and I don't know what I'm gonna do here. Like, I feel like I'm gonna go back into Returnal and play it again at some point, but as of now, I have put it down.
Lay it to rest for a bit.
Yeah, and I also looked up, like, because I was just like, I'm gonna cut the chit chat, and I'm gonna look up what happens, and apparently even still after, it's not a complete coherent thing. Like, it is something you will have to like
piece together,
connect the dots, and have other people connect dots with you and stuff like that. And so
stories like that are difficult to gauge whether or not, I don't know, they're appropriate or well done. I always thought the way Dark Souls, because I always felt like the way Dark Souls and told its story fit what the game was, right? Because it is a game that's like post-apocalyptic, and you kind of have to be brave, to run into this cave or whatever. So if you want to know, just like everything else in the game where you have to put in the work, it's like if you want to understand the world, you have to put in the work to understand it.
Yeah, of course.
And like all the characters are really, I remember in Dark Souls, the very first Dark Souls, there's that knight who just sort of laughs when you talk to him. So it's like people, their moods have been attuned to the world around them. This constant death and monsters and stuff like that. So anyway, so I think like as a good example of that kind of thing, that's great. But I also think there are games, it can become an excuse. Well, it's like, well, it's a mystery. Yes. And it's to the point where it's just like, I don't even care because because there's not a driving force, and it's not worth the time or the effort to figure all this stuff out. Yeah.
For me at least. But yes, sure. I think you hit the nail on the head. And that's where my apprehension of continuing playing the game comes from, because I've always said it with games, particularly something like Monster Hunter or even roguelikes that don't have a continuing story. Like I have to have an end goal of some sort.
Sure.
And at first it was giving me like oh man, all right, great, what's going on? And then it just kind of, I will say though, there is because there's biomes, different biomes that you go through, like, oh yeah, there's a desert, there's a forest, there's a, well, I was going to say rainy forest, but I forgot what it's
like the first one.
Yeah, but it's more swamp. It's a swamp.
Swampy, yeah.
Swampy.
It's probably the closest thing.
Then there's Ice World. I did not expect there to be a particular biome. I'm going to let you like discover that when you play it eventually, but I did not expect there to be a particular biome, and I was scared shitless.
Well, there's only one fear that I know you and I both share.
Okay, all right. Well,
I don't know if it has anything to do with that.
I can't remember that fear we both share, so we'll move on. Yeah.
It has 8 legs.
Okay, no.
It's not that. Okay.
Thank God, no. No. But anyways, yeah, that's Returnal. So I played that, and I don't know what I'm going to move on to next. What is it, July 22nd? I think we got a couple things coming out very soon that I can move to.
Yeah, on consoles, I don't know off the top of my head, but
Death's Door just came out on Game Pass. So to check that out.
Oh yeah,
or I'm going to. But anyways, so moving on. I'm playing more of Disco Elysium.
Oh boy,
and I have not gotten much further than I have when we last talked. But I can tell you that I don't know if I've ever played a game that made me so excited to have my anxiety through the roof. Because it's the Disco Elysium is so difficult to explain, but like your boss battles are conversations. If that makes sense. Like it's definitely not like, you don't go into a room and it's like boss battle, this person, it's just, you can already tell as you're speaking with a particular person that you have a boss battle going on. And it forces you to really think about what your response is going to be to a person, because those will in turn affect your roles in the future against said person. So
Interesting.
There was a person I met who basically I was introduced to, and he's like, hey, take a seat. And already, like, your mind is talking to you like, hey, that chair doesn't look too great. Do you really want to sit in there? What is your, like, your, you know, the conversation going on? And so just me, because I'm playing it as I would think, which I need to stop. I need to, like, stop and think, you know. I was like, well, you know, he's offering a seat and I don't want to be that guy. I'm going to take a seat. That was wrong. Because eventually, like, as you're talking to him, the conversation interrupts your inner conversationalist. Yeah, your inner monologue, like, interrupts and is like, look, you're really trying to understand him and listen to him, but this chair is terrible and it's causing you discomfort. You're starting to show it in front of him. He catches it and starts to, like, he knows what he's doing against you.
Oh, interesting.
Like, the game knows what it's doing against you, but, like, if you're not choosing the right things, it's like, ah, crap. And I was trying to get answers against this guy, but when there came a time to basically force a piece of information out of him, when I highlighted it, it would, if you can't pass it easily, it'll say, like, challenging or impossible or something.
Sure.
It would say, like, challenging, and I would hover over it, and it would be like -1 for sitting in the chair, negative whatever for, but
wow.
plus, you know, for, like, whatever you chose, like, the game is actively like doing this again. So now it's kind of like, you really, who you're talking to, you have to understand what type of person they are. There is a bookstore lady that I was talking to. Her daughter's out in the front working. She's not working in good conditions, but if you are kind of not necessarily sympathetic to the mother, but if you're like, hey, your daughter's doing a great job out there, she's a trooper or whatnot, but you know that's not really, like, the moral centerpiece of the conversation, you will still get points against her because she's like, yes, I am a good mother. But if you, like, are like, hey, you should, you know, that's child endangerment, like, you shouldn't be having her work out there in those conditions, you will get negative points against her because she hates you. And it's so fascinating, and there's so much. I would hate to be a writer.
I imagine it would be difficult.
I mean, a writer for stuff like fiction or whatnot, and creating a world this in depth, because Disco Elysium has so much history to it in this fictionalized world, so much history, so many different types of races and countries, and you can get into with certain characters the entirety of how their governmental system works. If you just have a discussion with somebody, and you can get into then, like, how the police force works and why in this particular section that you're in, it's not as powerful as other sections.
Oh, wow.
And
okay.
It's astonishing, and it's both so intriguing, and I want to sit there all day and listen to it, but at the same time, I'm playing a game, so I'm kind of have to, like, at some points be like, is this really important to my knowledge at the moment? Okay, kind of click and skip through this. Yes. I haven't had a point to where that's detrimental.
Sure.
Well, maybe 1 point, but still, it makes me rethink playing the game. But what sucks is that when I start playing it, I forget to think about how to play the game, and then it comes crashing down on certain situations. So, and I always feel like I have to take a risk when rolling, quote unquote rolling. I have to take the risk, you know. If I even have, like, a 52% chance of doing it, it's like, yeah, let's go for it. Let's, you know. And I could win, I could lose, but cool. But I honestly, like, there are certain games that throughout the years we've been doing this podcast, I'm like, man, I can't wait till Tyler plays this. And this is another one.
Well, we're going to talk about the Steam Deck in a little bit.
Oh, right.
And so that may be that may be my chance to finally play Disco Elysium on the Steam Deck. Who knows? Anything else?
That's it. I played about an hour. Half hour of the fighting game Guilty Gear Strive last night. I ended up picking it up for me and my friends, but you know, it's another one of those situations where I haven't gotten deep enough into it to where I can make a opinion on it. However, I will say that this is supposedly, at least according to the back of the box, their wording makes it seem like it's the final Guilty Gear game, and so there is a long history of that series, and they have a timeline inside of its main menu. Like right at its main menu, it's like, oh, do you fight, story, and then it's like glossary or whatever. Mm-hmm. It is a very, very in-depth timeline of every single event that has gone on in this series. So it starts with like before the game started, and then you'll click the next page, and like it becomes a spider web, kind of like a family tree. And then it's like, oh, these characters are introduced, and you start finding out the names of the pages are essentially other names for the particular games that were going on. And so like more characters are introduced, and then you find like their ties to each other. Like, are they lovers? Are they like, do they hate each other? Are they villains?
So there's an entire,
Yeah. And so it has the like arrow to this person, and then you can go each one, and it'll tell you everything that happened to it. And I'm very, very happy that they did that, because I've played a lot of the Guilty Gear games, and I have no freaking clue what's going on in that series. So, but that's it. That's all I've been playing.
Seems like that happens with a lot of video games.
Oh, yes.
Video game series, franchises.
Yeah.
So I've been playing a lot, actually. And so I'm going to narrow it down to a couple things. I am getting the itch to play Squad again, which I haven't played in a long time.
Does that have VR yet?
It doesn't. Okay. Squad VR would be insane, but I haven't played Squad in a long time, so I hop back into it. Mm-hmm. I got into it because I got super into painting model tanks and stuff.
Yeah.
And so I was like,
very nice collection, by the way.
Thank you. So I was wondering, I was like, oh, Postscriptum is World War II Squad, essentially.
Okay.
So it's like, I wonder how many of these tanks are on Postscriptum. Loaded up Postscriptum. There's a bunch of them in there, and I'm like, oh, geez, I want to drive a tank around. And then I was like, I wonder what's new in Squad. Loaded up Squad, bunch of new stuff. I'm like, oh, geez. And hopped into a game. I didn't do squad leading in Squad. About a couple weeks ago, I DM'd my first. It wasn't Dungeons and Dragons. It was a different role playing game, but it was the first time I DM'd something. Right?
Okay.
Like playing as the dungeon master. Being a squad leader in Squad is a lot like being a dungeon master. Like you're not only playing for yourself, but you're sort of managing everybody else's game.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And I know you've played. I don't know if you've ever DM'd before.
No, I've never DM'd.
No. If you've played D&D, you know what I'm talking about. Like, because the one person's like, you walk into the tavern and you see this. But being an SL, being a squad leader in Squad is sort of similar, because not only are you doing your own stuff, but it's like you have to know the composition of your squad. Do you have anti-tank abilities? Do you have a sniper? Do you have like what loadouts do they have? Do you want to take a vehicle? Where are you at on the map? And then where are you gonna tell your guys to go to accomplish an objective or whatever? Anyway, so I made that realization this week. But yeah, I'm itching to get back into it, because Squad is just so freaking. It's a multiplayer game, right?
Yeah.
That it funnels everyone into objectives, but you can still outsmart and outthink other people.
Yeah, of
course. And outmaneuver entire teams. And it feels incredible when you do that, because it takes effort, and it takes luck, and it takes skill to realize, hey, if we went to this side of the map, set up a spawn point in this city, flanked, the enemy's front line from this side, because our team is attacking over here, we could pinch the enemy advance. And you don't know where the enemy is, so you just have to surmise with how the battle is going and stuff like that. So when those things all click and it all works, it's so incredibly satisfying. Anyway, so only play Squad a little bit. That's not one of the games I wanted to talk about, but I like it so much I just started talking about it. 3 games. Devour, which is a co-op horror game on Steam.
Okay.
Came out in January, I think. It's only $5. It's not a very long game. There's only 2 missions, 2 levels. And it's a really basic concept. So it's you and 3 other people, up to 3 other people.
Yeah.
And basically your job is to stop a cult leader from summoning like a demon, right?
Okay.
And it's partially run and hide horror, partially not. How the game is, I don't want to give too much of it away, because part of the fun is figuring the game out.
Yeah.
But basically you have to complete steps, sort of like a puzzle. Puzzle doesn't change, it's always the same thing, but figuring out the puzzle the first time is fun. And so you have to complete this puzzle to stop the summoning from happening, right? And the whole time that you are completing this puzzle, there is a monster that's roaming around the map, right?
Okay.
And it's always on the map, it never disappears. Now this monster isn't always hostile. So you may turn a corner and the monster's right there just staring at you. And it's like the monster in that moment is docile. So you can run right by it and nothing happens. But it seems like at random moments, the monster will wake up and decide to, I
Choose
must
violence.
kill again,
Yeah.
right? And go after people. And then what you have to do is you have a flashlight, and when you right click, it turns into a UV light. And you have to UV light the monster as it's running at you.
Yeah.
And it'll cover its eyes and try to get closer and closer to you. And then if you do it long enough, it'll sort of calm back down. And then it gives you like 5 minutes to go complete other things while the monster sort of
is recharging.
Is sort of gaining its strength again. It's a really basic concept, really well executed, a whole lot of fun. And one of the monsters that you face off against is horrifying. So I'm not even going to describe what it is. It's humanoid, and it whispers.
Oh,
Like it's talking to itself the whole time.
yeah.
And it takes these really big, sort of like cartoony tiptoe steps, like really long steps.
yeah.
And it
Like
looks
it has
like it's
long
trying
legs,
to
basically.
sneak,
Okay.
And it's just scary as hell because while it does that, it's like whispering to itself. And you'll literally be in a room and you're like, oh, I need this. You turn the corner outside the door, it's right there. But it's docile, so it just sort of walks past you. It's so terrifying.
Ugh.
It's a really fun co-op game, and for $5, we played 2.5 hours, and that was $5, right?
Yeah,
and
sure.
that's so cool,
That's-
and it's so well done. So 100%. If you're into co-op horror and stuff, I recommend Devour. The other two games. So I'm completing my Witcher 3 playthrough. My new game plus,
the hard one, right?
new game plus, super hard difficulty except for Gwent. Gwent's on baby
All right.
easy. So I'm close to completing that, and I also got back into Ghost of Tsushima. I got Connor had my PlayStation for a long time. Let him borrow it. He played a bunch of stuff, gave it back. And I think it's interesting because the two games are similar. They're both dudes with swords riding a horse, whatever. But they're also different in a lot of interesting ways. And I think playing Ghost of Tsushima sort of re-engaged a lot of the thoughts I had on it when it first came out. And I think what I will remember Ghost of Tsushima for 15 years from now, when we have the second or third one or whatever, is how player friendly it is,
Yes, it very, very much is.
But I don't think that's the right way to make a game, On the other side of the spectrum, you have something like Red Dead, which is not, I wouldn't define that as player friendly. It's like if you want to pick something up off the ground, there's a 15-second animation.
Yeah.
To fast travel, you have to go to Arthur's tent and find a map, and then that allows you to fast
find
travel.
a signpost, right?
Or find a signpost. Yeah. So it's not super easy. Yeah. Whereas Ghost of Tsushima, wherever you are, you can fast travel, right?
Okay.
Very much like, I guess Skyrim, because I think it's the same way in Skyrim. You just click on a map location and you go there, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And then like when you're picking up resources and stuff, it's just right trigger, disappears off the ground, goes into your inventory. Yep. So it's all really player friendly, and they do that really well. But I don't think it's the right way to make a game, or it's a intrinsically better way to make a game. But I appreciate that we have that sort of spectrum, right?
Yeah. Of
games that are more difficult to play, games that are a little bit easier, and games in between.
Right.
Witcher's a little bit in between. The other thing I wanted to say about Ghost is just how phenomenal the combat is. That it is really good.
It is
really great combat.
I think about that. I think that's the first thing I think about when I think of Ghost of Tsushima is how the swords feel like against when you like block an enemy sword or parry it out of the way, and that subsequent like twist around the enemy and slice, and it's very, very memorable.
Yep. And there's a bunch of stuff that you have your 4 stances, and if you hold triangle, it like does different things with each stance. So you can kind of, if you remember them, it's like you can pick even though, your stance like to go against shielded guys, you can use that against, dudes with spears. You don't have to only use it against shield guys. So you can kind of pick, stances that you prefer, what their attacks are and stuff like that. But the combat is when you get into a fight and you knock out all the enemies and you don't take a hit, right? It is so like just like Squad, it's so ridiculously fulfilling.
Yes.
And then you also have those fights where you get hit a bunch of times, you're shot by an arrow, and it feels like really dirty and messed up, you know, and you hate yourself and you kind of want to do it over. And Ghost just nailed it and nailed it so well. So I'm really excited to see what they do with the what they add in the expansions, and then obviously going forward. I don't have too much more to say about Witcher 3, except that one thing I probably forgot about was how Witcher 3 almost becomes a science fiction story in a weird sense. There's a mission, there's a quest at the end of the game. So the whole thing is about multiple universes, right?
Yes.
If you don't remember.
Yes.
Because you have the Dark Elves, that's what I call them. They have their name. The Wild Hunt, right?
Yes.
Which are Dark Elves from another universe. And the Wild Hunt transports from their universe into the Witcher's universe, and they kidnap people, right? And then they take them back to their universe. So you have sort of these different universes going on. But there's a quest at near the end of the game where you jump through a bunch of portals and you go to a bunch of like abandoned worlds, and they're not just in different places in space, they're in different places in time.
Time too. Oh wow.
So you go to the Witcher's world, but it's hundreds of years in the future if the Wild Hunt wins, right?
Ooh,
And so
okay.
everything is like covered in snow. And I had forgotten about this, but it is so, it crafts that that sense that Geralt is powerful, but he's also small, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like
that
scenes,
does, yeah.
scenes when Geralt walks into a room and there's Avallac'h and Yennefer and all these other characters, and you know Geralt is like this badass and he's got his swords, but you know all these other people have super
Their
strong abilities
yeah.
and stuff like that, and it's so, they make it so believable, you know. Each of them have their studies, how the dialogue is written, so it rounds it out really well. And so in that quest, when you're going through different places in time and space, for me it sort of reignited like just a sense of awe with how well they wrote that story. I know I'm not a huge fan of the end of The Witcher and how the endings work. I think it's kind of arbitrary.
Oh, okay, cool.
But
glad to hear someone else.
Oh no,
thinks
it's
that.
100%.
Yeah.
That's not an opinion. That is a fact.
Oh, okay, all right.
Like,
So
you could say the wrong line of dialogue, and both seem fine, and that line of dialogue affects the ending. It's kind of silly.
I haven't beat it.
Oh, you haven't?
No.
Oh wow.
No.
Okay.
I forgot where I stopped, but
I may have just spoiled something really cool for you.
no,
I apologize.
you haven't, because well, you did, but
I'm sorry.
but that's not like I'm more of a type of like, how do we get there, you know?
Okay,
So I'm
gotcha.
more fulfilled by that than the outcome. But my wife got absolutely drawn into The Witcher 3, and she got up until the end where she basically has to make whatever final choice or whatever for like one of the several endings or something. At least that's what she said. And she gets anxiety when she has to make a decision like that, so she just looked up like all of them to see what would happen, and she hates every single one. She's like, "This is dumb.
Every single ending."
Yeah, and she's like, "I'm not going to make any decision." She's like, "I beat the game, whatever." I'm like, "Oh, okay." So.
I mean, there are two of the endings that I like. One of the endings I think is dumb because it's the bad ending, quote unquote. That's super arbitrary, and so I think that's probably the Witcher's biggest weakness. But yeah, going back to the game, rediscovering all these characters, and that quest where he goes through all the portals, it's just so freaking cool. And it's so freaking well done. Because it doesn't, I don't know how to put this without just talking more. I don't know. It doesn't, it feels real, right? It doesn't just feel like, oh, they get there via magic. It's like, no, they get there because Avallac'h has an ability that he can explain of how they travel between universes, and there's limits to this ability, and he tells you that, hey, I can do this, but this is beyond my power. That's why we need Cirilla to do this, this, and this. You know, so it's not just that these people have magic, and that's it. It's like these people have magic, but, you know, like in Lord of the Rings, it's like there's sort of palpable, tangible limitations and regulations and rules to these things that make them feel real. And I guess that's what I mean by science fiction, because when you start to write down like, here's what a ship can do and here's what it can't do, and stuff like that, it feels like more science fiction than just magic. You can do whatever. Anyway, I'm ready to move on. You ready?
Yeah, no, let's do it.
We want to give a massive shout out to the sponsors of this episode. They have been silently supporting us since the very beginning, and we felt it was time to give them some love. The like and share buttons have been at our side since episode 1 of the podcast. They can be found just beneath this episode. Please give them a click, it helps us greatly. If you're feeling lucky, click the bell icon to enter for a notification anytime we post new content. You may be surprised by what you get.
I almost forgot to hit the ad break there. I would have been really annoyed with myself having to go back and edit that in.
Yeah, put it in, slide it in
post. Yeah, right. Okay, so we're gonna get into this Activision story, and if you haven't heard about what's going on, it just dropped last night, I think.
It did, yes.
And so there's all kinds of bad stuff in this: sexual assault, sexual abuse, sexism. It's very bad.
Very bad.
So, warnings out there. I'll put in the time code if you'd rather not listen to the story. Activision is being sued for fostering a sexist culture. This is according to a lawsuit filed by the California Department of Fair Employment and Housing. Activision Blizzard has fostered a frat boy culture in which women are sexually assaulted, passed up for promotions, and are subjected to unequal pay and retaliation. The suit follows a 2-year investigation. There is a lot in the suit and a lot being said online and people coming out on Twitter and saying stuff, so we can't get into anything. With regards to the allegations, not to what's the word I'm looking for? Not to belittle them or anything. It is a lot of the same stuff that we've heard before.
Yes. Well, and some other.
And so, there are a few other things that we haven't. Let me get back to my notes here. The suit says women were held back for promotions for fear of them getting pregnant, fear in quotation marks. Women were criticized for leaving to get their children from daycare. Women on the WoW team, World of Warcraft specifically, said that the male employees/supervisors would hit on them, make derogatory comments about rape, and otherwise engage in demeaning behavior. The suit also points to one story where a female Activision employee who was in a romantic relationship with her supervisor committed suicide during a business trip. Beforehand, male colleagues shared explicit photos of her and I guess passed the photos around. Activision released a statement saying the picture the lawsuit paints is not the Blizzard workplace of today, and that over the past several years and throughout the investigation, they've made significant changes to address company culture. I'm going to read sort of a bit of this statement. It's a little lengthy, but it's important. Quote, "The lawsuit includes distorted and false descriptions of Blizzard's past. We have been extremely cooperative with the Department of Fair Employment and Housing throughout their investigation, but they refused to inform us what issues they perceived. They were required by law to have good faith discussions with us to better understand and to resolve any claims or concerns before going to litigation, but failed to do so. They rushed to file an inaccurate complaint. This is the type of irresponsible behavior from unaccountable state bureaucrats that are driving many of the state's best businesses out of California." End quote.
This is like the messiest story I've ever heard in all of my years of playing video games, of being what I'd like to consider the gaming news journalism circle.
Sure.
I've never heard like so many accounts of things that were just absolutely deplorable. I think this was a 29-page.
It was very long.
29 page.
And it's a lawsuit, so a lot of lawsuits are.
Of course. But this does not look good. And some people there's a kind of argument going on right now. The state of California would not have filed this if they did not have the evidence against it. That's what I've heard people say, but other people have said not necessarily.
Yeah,
so it's kind of this like.
So what makes this difficult to talk about, one, is that it's a Department of California government that I never heard before. So I was like, oh, this can happen.
Okay.
I never, that wasn't even something I knew. And I guess what I'm trying to get to is there's a bunch of legal considerations that I have no ground to stand on, right?
Right, of course.
Like Activision says that, they sued us before coming to us to talk about stuff. Mm-hmm. There are but there are passages in the lawsuit where it seems like this California department reached out to Activision to try some things and it didn't work, so then they went to the lawsuit. But I'm not sure where to place any of that. However, these stories are not unbelievable, knowing that what we know about how Riot stuff that went down at Riot,
right?
Kind of stuff that goes down at Ubisoft, and the kind of stuff that goes down in a lot of different industries,
right? Yes.
And then there were people on Twitter that, former Blizzard, Activision Blizzard employees that came out on Twitter and said, hey, I guess it's my time to share my story.
Yeah.
And it was retweeted by a bunch of people. So I think that's like the litigation of the whole thing I'm less interested in.
Yes.
Because a lawyer is going to argue based on a bunch of different,
of course,
like, not morally right, but legally right. Right. But it seems like a bunch of people came out with stories and stuff like that. And so I tend to think, hey, I would not be surprised if a lot of the stuff in the lawsuit is true, just because it's not that far-fetched at all.
Right.
And a bunch of people came out on Twitter and said the same kind of thing. So it's like, okay, that's good enough for me, kind of.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't know. I'm afraid to repeat a lot of the same things I've said about Ubisoft.
Yes.
But I guess we kind of have to.
Yeah, we do, unfortunately.
Because what else is there to say? And I think, change the kind of change that is required for something like this to change is top down, right? And it's the same thing with crunch, right? Some low-level artist somewhere cannot impact, cannot send ripple waves up. It's like the scene in Saving Private Ryan or Captain Miller, gripes go down or gripes go up, not go down, right? So it's like if you want to change something, it's the other way around. It's like change has to come from the top down.
Mm-hmm.
And that didn't happen at Ubisoft. At Ubisoft, Yves Guillemot is just as much of a, as a victim as everybody else, apparently. And so at Activision Blizzard, how does that kind of change happen? And the other thing I think is Activision Blizzard was not necessarily in good standing. I think the way that they handled the Hong Kong protests was despicable, was cowardly.
Yeah.
And I think this kind of just makes them look similar. I don't know. It's just sort of the same kind of thing. Just not a great company. I saw people on Twitter saying that when they worked there, most of the time it was great, but there's just certain people in power that made it not great. And so, I don't know. I don't know the extent. I don't know if it's something where it was like Ubisoft, where no matter where you went, apparently, it was horrible, or you had a possibility of something horrible happening to you. I don't know. But yeah, I guess I'm probably, I don't know. I don't want to belittle any of it, by like glazing over it. And there is a lot of it.
There's a ton of it, but I mean, a ton of it that just I can't ignore personally.
Sure, yeah, of course.
And whether it's true or not, I have to believe what's going on because of obviously this suit. To me, this suit would not be brought up unless, some of it was true, even if all of it. But to read stuff that one of the higher ups had a room dubbed the Cosby Room.
Yeah, it was known as the Cosby Room. Yeah.
And obviously the story about the employee who unfortunately took her own life, having a lactation room be not necessarily evacuated, but it's hey, we got to have a meeting in here, get out. And it's well, come on, there's a lot here. It's very overwhelming and very I have kind of a knee-jerk reaction to it last night because it was just so. We've heard, we've talked about it before. We've heard a lot of the stuff from Ubisoft, from what was the other studio? I can't remember.
There's Riot at one point.
Riot was the other one, but
and even smaller studios. Not to cut you off, sorry.
No,
but even
that's
smaller studios, like Scavenger Studio. Yeah. Even there is similar stuff.
But even then, I sat down next to my wife last night after reading some of this stuff, and I was like, I'm not going to buy another Activision Blizzard game.
Yeah, and I don't blame you for feeling that way.
and I've never had to like say something like that. I generally don't say anything like that, but this is just unless there's a drastic change, which unfortunately I know we won't see.
Not drastic enough.
Yeah, not drastic enough. Then you know, my opinion will try to stay that way. Unfortunately, knowing me, I'll probably slip up. but this is very, very unfortunate story, and at this moment in time, we have nothing else to do but to, I guess, sit and wait and see what comes of this.
Yep, and it's a lawsuit, so I'm sure it'll be
it'll be long drawn out. Yep,
yeah, but I'm also sure that stories are happening. Jason Schreier tweeted out that he's heard several stories of people saying this kind of stuff happens at Activision Blizzard, and that I don't want to say he hinted at he's working on a story, but that he had heard in the past. Yeah. So it seemed like something. Well, if it'd be easy to imagine that would be an upcoming story or something like that. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure there are other journalists working on similar things. And I think people have less of a tolerance for this now. I think people are more, and this is based on nothing but just how many of these things have happened. Mm-hmm. I think people are more willing to talk about it. Because of the Me Too movement and not just this kind of harassment stuff, but also crunch. Yeah. Just because of how many stories and how that has shaped the narrative, right? Getting to the point where, executives of CD Projekt Red were addressing crunch, right? Even if they weren't really telling the truth, it was something they were talking about in public. Yeah. So the culture has sort of shifted. So I think people are more willing to talk about that, which I think leads to more not awareness. I don't know the word I'm looking for. More awareness, more understanding, and hopefully to a resolution. But I just want to get back to one more point again. Like, this kind of thing requires systemic top-down change, right?
Yes, always.
And when it's this, I don't know. When I have like a personal rule that I don't ever want to say this person should be fired, right? Yeah. Unless it's something super duper obvious, footage of them doing something heinous or something that's like, okay, well, yeah, who's going to disagree with me? But it's like when you are an executive of a company that makes so much money and this kind of thing happens under your nose, and it also happens under other executives' noses at other companies, and it's so similar, like, I feel as though the solution is to gut that and restart, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. Bobby Kotick was already very unpopular.
Well, not only that, like, speaking of him, because you brought him up, back in
I'll say his name.
2010, he lost a sexual harassment case.
Oh, did he?
Yes, he did.
Oh, geez,
back in 2010.
I don't remember this.
Yes. And although it's less, I don't know if there's like concrete proof of it or anything, and it's stupid to bring it up, but it just shows the type of crowd he rolls with. He was in Epstein's book.
Oh, gee. Oh, are you?
Yeah, yes.
All right, we're getting weird here.
Yeah, no, right. So that's why I said, like, I know it's stupid, but like, obviously there's a trend here.
Sure. But I don't know. If I had, I guess what I would wish for is to have other people in front of me who were executives of companies where this thing doesn't happen and tell, if I had Phil Spencer across from me and I say, Phil,
right,
let's say at Xbox, Ubisoft happens. Are you accountable for that? And what lengths do you think you're accountable to it? Mm-hmm. I would love for an executive to give an honest answer about that. Yeah. The buck stops here kind of an answer. And, I don't know if Bobby Kotick doesn't talk to, like, he didn't appear on stage. Well, I don't remember if he appeared. He doesn't have the same public face that like an Yves Guillemot does.
No, well, right. I mean, at a certain point, I think during the Modern Warfare,
I'm sure
3 era,
maybe
he
once
did
or twice
for
happened.
a moment. Yeah, and then just went away.
But
again.
It's not in the same way that like Yves Guillemot does or Andrew Wilson, right? Where they're sort of they're one of the main people on stage all the time. It's just that's not how I remember it. At least I could be 100% wrong. But yeah, so maybe if he had that same sort of public appearance kind of thing, I don't know, maybe there'd be more pressure. I just, I don't see how this sort of systemic thing can be solved keeping a lot of the same people in power
around. Yes.
Because just like, I don't know, it's fostered and it's carried somehow and someone has to put up with it. I'm done talking. I'm done talking. It's very bad. It's very bad. Are you ready to move on?
Yes, let's do it.
The Steam Deck was officially announced by Valve. This was last week, but we didn't have a show, so we have to talk about it because it's kind of a big deal. We heard rumors of this, but it's now official.
Yeah.
Steam Deck is a portable gaming PC made to work with Steam. Some quick specs: 7-inch LCD. I just hit my mic. 7-inch LCD touch display with 1280. Okay, so the spec said 1280 by 800.
Yeah.
Which I thought was weird because it's not like one of the normal.
Yeah.
Resolutions.
I mean, with some of the handhelds, there's wacky, like mid. But the LCD screen itself didn't look necessarily widescreen.
Yeah.
It kind of had like a little bit more squariness to them.
Anyway, 1280 by 800, 60 hertz refresh rate, 3 versions, which we'll talk about in a second. Steam says it can play AAA games and you'll be able to plug it into bigger screens. There is a dock that's going to be sold separately. Battery life varies pretty widely. Speaking to IGN, Valve developer Pierre-Loup Griffat, I believe, said, quote, battery life is about 2 to 8 hours, depending on what you're doing. You can play Portal for 4 hours. If you limit it to 30 FPS, you're going to be playing for about 5 to 6 hours, end quote. So that's, Portal 2 came out like a million years ago.
Yeah.
So, who knows? Anyway, it runs a custom version of SteamOS built on Proton, which is a version of Linux that supports both Linux and Windows. IGN says this means you can do. I'm referring to IGN because
they're the ones who had the hands-on.
They're the ones that had the hands-on, and I'll be honest. I'm not sure what you can do swapping out OSs and stuff like that.
Yeah,
so I'm going to say that this is probably correct. IGN says this means you can do pretty much anything to the Steam Deck you can do to a PC, like load other game stores such as Epic, GOG, Origin, etc. You can even replace SteamOS with Windows, even though the handheld is made specifically for SteamOS. But you can if that's something that you really want to do. The 3 versions, there's a 64 gigabyte $399 version that does not come with a solid state drive. That's not the eMMC drive. I don't think is a solid state.
I don't even know what type of drive that is.
I don't think it's like considered anyway, doesn't matter. A 256 gigabyte solid state and that comes at $259, and then 512 gigabyte solid state at $649. Mm-hmm. And I think the biggest differences are just the storage space.
The 512, I think it's the 512 has some sort of like glare reflective anti-scratch.
And they come with a carrying case.
It comes with a carrying case.
So they come with other like tchotchkes here and there and stuff like that. But yeah, the big difference between the 64 gigabyte and like the 256 is the hard drive. I think that's probably the biggest tech difference. Anyway, okay. Mm-hmm. So what do you think?
This is awesome, in my opinion. From what I have known, China has had a lot of different handhelds that are similar to this. I mean, we even had the NVIDIA Shield years back.
Sure.
But I can't remember if Steam Shield streamed games to the handheld.
I want to say yes. I don't know though.
But this being its own native like PC machine, at this point in time, it's better off to just get this than a new GPU. At least it's going to be a lot cheaper. For me personally, if I were to even grab one of these versions, I would grab the 64, the cheapest one. Mm-hmm. It does have a micro SD card slot on it.
Yeah.
And on a good day on Amazon, you can get like a 512 gigabyte for like $40-$50. So it's like, why not? Why not, in my opinion? And I think it's really cool. It's big, it's bulky. I'm not sure about the trackpads though. On the handheld, because they tried to do that with the Steam controller. And that controller was wild. I've held one of those. I don't know if you have, but it's
I have a long time ago.
Very weird, weird and awkward.
Yeah, never used it. Well, I used it for a little bit, but yeah.
And it's funny because they even asked. I watched a little bit of the IGN video, and they even asked them if you could do VR on it, and they were like, "Yeah, but it's probably not like the best way to do it."
Yeah.
But not that I would want to, but it's just knowing how powerful this thing is.
How versatile that is. Sure.
Yeah, and it's very cool. I can already tell that it's going to be a modder's dream, you know, for
I'm sure.
particularly for
There are a bunch of
retro
nerds out there,
gaming
yeah.
and emulation and stuff like that. But I just think of. So I'm going to skip to this conversation real quick because as soon as it was announced, the entire conversation went to Switch has a competitor.
I know what you're going to say. I know what you're going to say. I'm inside your mind.
Yeah, you are. No.
Yeah, I knew it. I knew it. I knew it. We have chemistry. That's why we do a podcast together.
Absolutely not. These are going to be two completely separate entities, completely separate audiences.
Sure.
You even have to have a Steam account in order to use this thing.
Yeah.
How much of the average Joe Schmo who owns a Nintendo Switch has a Steam account? Not only that, even knows about Steam. Like it's a large amount of them. This has nothing to do with it. Let's have it in different discussions, please. However, this does, even though they have nothing to do with each other and it won't affect the Switch sales or whatnot. I do think this gets rid of a big question when it comes to Switch, and that is, when is it coming to Switch? Like that
doesn't matter anymore.
That question is going to go away
Yeah.
because you just get the Steam Deck and there you go. When I think this Steam Deck, when I think this handheld, for some, I'm automatically thinking about all the indie games.
Yep.
All the great indie games that you could play, you could pull out, play for a couple hours. Thinking of playing like a short hike on it, Night in the Woods. All these games that, 5 hours or less, just a quick jump in, play a little bit, jump out. I don't foresee people playing stuff like Apex Legends on this thing or Battlefield 2042, but Squad, yeah. But this definitely, I think, scratches the itch for a lot of people at what they want. I mean, I have a friend who really wants a PC, but he doesn't really care about like specs and like having a 3090 or whatever.
Sure.
And, like, just get this, man. Just get this, get a dock, put it on your TV. You're good.
Yep.
It's a very, very, very good cheap alternative, and we'll see how it performs when it's actually out in the hands of people.
So I agree. I agree that I don't see these things as two competitors. I don't know. They're competitors in the same sense that, like, I don't know, Netflix competes with like fast food restaurants. Like they're both competing for money. I don't know. Like their goal is the same thing, but they're kind of two different arenas.
No, you're McDonald's to Pizza Hut. Like
like
they're both food, but you're not like really going for the same.
So I guess that's a really dumb way of saying I agree with you.
I agree.
And like Nintendo is Nintendo, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So they live in their own universe and they do their own stuff and they're fine.
Yeah.
They're totally fine. And, I think that's kind of the end of the conversation. Now, I will say that doesn't mean that this may cost Nintendo sales here and there.
Right.
Because right now I'm telling you, like, where am I going to play Baldur's Gate 3? It's going to be on one of these guys. It's not going to be on my Nintendo Switch.
Right.
But that doesn't mean I don't want to Switch, and that doesn't mean I don't want to play games on the Switch, right? It doesn't mean that I don't want to play the next, Legend of Zelda on there or what have you. But for someone like me, my first choice of playing like the indie games that you spoke of will probably be on here. But maybe my Switch, right? So it's kind of a toss-up. But on games that are more demanding that the Switch has trouble running or that there are bugs and stuff like that, like Pillars of Eternity, like it's a no-brainer that you go with this.
Right. Absolutely.
So I agree there. The other thing is this makes Steam a platform now, right?
It does in a sense, yes.
Yeah, because now if this works and it's a big success, Steam is not just a storefront on a PC. It's a storefront with a console, right? Because that's what this is. It's a gaming PC that you can you throw Windows on or whatever, but it's essentially a console. And that's something that Epic and GOG and all the other storefronts don't have. Is they don't have their own version of a console or something like that.
Right.
So that the Valve Index, I don't know if you want to consider it part of the ecosystem or not. It's one headset of many. It's a really good one. But I mean, and I don't know. I think I assume you could get Xbox Game Pass on this thing. So
Sure, yeah. I mean, you might have to install Windows.
yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah, I wouldn't. Because you can get Epic and GOG. That's what they said.
Yeah.
I assume Xbox Game Pass wouldn't be that big of a stretch. But anyway, sorry. What I'm trying to get back to is this sort of reminds me of sort of what Xbox is doing. This is sort of Steam branching out into an ecosystem. Not necessarily when you think of Steam, you think, okay, storefront on a PC. But if all of a sudden I'm constantly picking this console up and I'm playing Steam on a console somewhere, then all of a sudden that storefront becomes an ecosystem, right? And that affects every single decision I make about the games I want to play and where I want to purchase them. Just like with Xbox, right?
Yeah.
That's one of Xbox's downsides. Because with Halo Infinite, everything being on PC, like completely struck my interest in getting an Xbox Series X. It's like,
right. Yes,
why
exactly.
even get a console? Because it's going to be on PC. That's where I'm going to play it anyway.
Exactly.
So I don't need the Series X. And they're fine with that. But now it's like, let's say there's a PC RPG, and it's like, do I want to buy it on GOG or do I want to get it on Steam? And before it was like, well, I'll toss a coin, whatever. But now it's like, oh, well, Steam's the choice because I have the Steam Deck,
right.
So I think it's a huge deal if it runs right and if everything's good, which there's no reason it won't be, or there's no reason to think it wouldn't be, I guess.
Right.
But yeah, I love this. I love everything about it. I think it looks cool. But I do think there is going to be limitations. Like, yeah, I couldn't imagine playing squad on this kind of thing.
No.
Bigger, more active, more intense.
Right. Having something that needs the full capacity of a keyboard.
Yeah.
Actually, unless you put it on a dock and put the keyboard mouse on it.
But even then, I'd be hard pressed to imagine playing like Elite Dangerous on this.
Right.
Because you got the screen and the controllers, and so it's like, how do you so there are certain limitations, but I don't necessarily think that it's made for that. And I don't know if it is made for the guy who walks into a store and is like, okay, I'm going to buy a new console today.
Right.
Do I get the Switch or the Steam Deck? Like, I don't necessarily think it's made for that. Right. In the same way that xCloud isn't made to compete necessarily directly with the PS5. xCloud is just sort of this other thing that's a part of the Xbox ecosystem, right? Just like this is a part of the Steam ecosystem. So I think there's a discrepancy. I think there's a distinction there.
Yeah.
Did that make sense?
Yes, that did.
Yeah. Okay.
You're good.
Okay. Thank God. Yeah. Anyway, I'm really enthusiastic about this because I think this is a great deal, and I'm just desperate for a handheld console that I can play top-down RPGs on.
Yeah.
Please. Pillars of Eternity is super bugged on the Switch, and it makes me really sad.
Unfortunately, I'm surprised they haven't fixed that.
I played that game twice.
Really?
Twice.
Wow, you suffered through it, huh?
I mean, it's a really good game.
No, sure. Is it that big of a deal though?
Yes, for this, because now it's like all those top-down RPGs I want to play.
Yeah.
Nymeria, Tides of Torment from the late 90s. It's like, now I got a console for it. Hooray. And and it's better than sitting at the desktop. Okay. Good.
Yeah, we're good.
Netflix is getting into games. This was first reported by Bloomberg's Lucas Shaw and Mike Gurman. Netflix will offer video games via streaming within the year. That was, I think, last week. That was another story we missed. But this week, in a letter to investors, Netflix seemed to have confirmed it, saying, quote, "We're also in the early stages of further expanding into games. We view gaming as another new content category for us, similar to our expansion into original films, animation, and unscripted TV. Since we are nearly a decade into our push into original programming, we think the time is right to learn more about how our members value games," end quote. Games will be included with Netflix subscriptions at no additional cost. The focus, at least early on, will be games for mobile devices. I didn't mean to sound like that. Games for mobile devices.
Okay. You just I don't think this is necessarily a bad move. Netflix has created quality content since their push for original content on their platform. They have had way more hits than misses. Like way more hits than misses.
You think so?
Yeah, as far as their original content.
Oh, okay.
All right.
No, I just didn't know.
They're not unfamiliar with gaming. I mean, there was Black Mirror's Bandersnatch.
Yeah.
And then they
choose your own adventure.
Sure. And then they do have Minecraft story mode is on there as well, which is also a Telltale, like, choose your own adventure type deal. But, I mean, they were able to do it. I think that, I don't know if it's because they're in, like, my good graces, so to speak, but for some reason I have more faith in them to create a game than I do Amazon.
Sure. Maybe it's just because of all the stories we've heard about the Amazon debacle.
It could be as well.
Recently.
But it also depends on how they do it. If they focus on mobile devices, which is by far the like fastest growing, gaming platform, quote unquote, out there, then I think they can at least have a pretty good hit if they until they want to expand out to something else, and maybe they can have some of their original content that are IPs, create games based off those. That's probably what they'll start with. So we'll see. This is interesting, but we'll see what happens.
And so it's very vague, and it brings up a lot of questions because it's a lot of the same questions that I asked with Google Stadia, right? Because let's say you offer a game on Netflix. All right, cool. Is it an exclusive? Because if it isn't, then you're competing with Game Pass, wherever else that game is, right?
Yes.
And if you have to pay a subscription to then get to this game, some people may say, well, I already have a Game Pass subscription. Why do I need, so, or I'd rather get it on the Switch and rather than pay a subscription fee for Netflix, whatever. So there are questions there. The other thing is, if they are exclusives, then you got to hope they're good. Because if exclusives are bad, then you're just, the idea of it's only available on this system or on this service or whatever.
Right.
And if it's not any good or whatever, then it's not going to, obviously it's not going to, people aren't going to play it, whatever. But the other thing is retention. If your goal is to get people to stay with Netflix, right? Watch as many things as you can get them to watch on Netflix. Don't go to Hulu, stay on Netflix. Don't go to YouTube, stay on Netflix, right? Then I would imagine your game would have to be built around sort of that retention model, right?
Yeah.
Which brings up a lot of questions because that's not always a great thing gameplay wise, depending on how you do it. So it's really vague and all these questions are in the air, but they're all fascinating questions. And they're all questions that I had about Google Stadia. I will agree though, for no reason, maybe it's just because I like Stranger Things or something.
Which that game was good, apparently. The Stranger Things game was good.
Never played it.
I never did either. But
I'm more optimistic about this. Yeah. Maybe it's because they didn't announce it and say, first dibs on name if you pre-order. I don't know. Google Stadia really annoyed me with that.
Maybe.
So maybe that's why. But all those questions are in the air. And it's interesting. Okay. Ready for your return?
Yeah. My return to stuff.
A man discusses the news, but not like the big news, the little news. Little bit. This is the tidbits.
Are we going to have like an overlay video file that runs with that
Maybe
too?
One day.
One day?
Okay.
When we get some more production value.
I walk like into smoking a cigarette in a suit, black and white. I just walk into a spotlight.
You're our very own G-Man.
Yes.
Welcome to the Tidbits, where I present different pieces of news I thought were interesting throughout the last week or two. Hooray! And we'll start with more military stuff. A War Thunder player posted classified info on military tanks on the War Thunder forum. So a Challenger 2 tank commander and gunnery instructor in real life was arguing on the War Thunder forums that the Challenger 2's in-game design had needed adjustment. To prove his point, this user proceeded to post the official Challenger 2 Army Equipment Support publication, which is the manual and maintenance guide, similar to the U.S. Army field manuals.
Sure.
The user hoped to have this information further develop this tank model in the game. Obviously, you can't post classified information to a public forum, but at the end of it, I didn't catch what happened to the guy, but
nothing good.
I would not assume either. But Gaijin Entertainment, the developers behind War Thunder, has come out and said that they will not use this particular information to further development on War Thunder or the tanks in War Thunder. So
Sure.
That was fun. I kept reading the story and I kept laughing because it's just
it's hilarious. But I'm not an expert in military logistics.
Sure.
But you said a tank commander?
Says that's what I got from the story.
So am I to understand it was the tank commander that posted it?
Let me go back to the story. I'll give you your answer in a second.
Well, let me flesh out my thought here.
Sure.
Because in my mind, if you're a tank commander, someone doesn't go to basic training and then leave.
A user who claimed to have been a Challenger 2 tank commander and gunnery instructor in real life.
Okay, so they claim to be.
Claimed it to be. Yes.
Okay, well, claiming to be is one thing. Who
Sure.
knows where they've gotten the classified information.
Beats me.
But even if they were, that seems crazy to me because, like, I would assume it'd take you a while to go through the steps to become even a tank member, let alone a tank commander, you know?
Right.
The leader of a vehicle that can do tons and tons of massive damage, you know? So you get there and then you don't have the self-awareness not to post them on an online forum. So like there's something missing there.
There's a big gap in judgment there to
Yes. And this is how World War III is not going to be won. It's just how it's going to be fought. It's going to start and then we're going to like figure out how to let's just Gaijin, just under-deliver on a Russian tank, piss people off, and get them to post the blueprints. It'll be Operation like
cyber warfare.
And this is how. It won't be through hacking like freaking power grids and stuff. It'll be through pissing off the gamers and getting someone dumping.
There you go.
Dumping classified documents online. Exactly.
Those gaming losers. Lost Judgment may be the last title in the series using actor Takuya Kimura. Japanese talent agency Johnny's, that's the name of the talent agency, is in a dispute with Sega over the likeness of their most popular star, Takuya Kimura. Sega wants to publish Lost Judgment on PC and Steam. However, Johnny's has a strict likeness rights policy. Possible reasons could be that on a PC you can fairly easily modify character models. In doing so, the likeness of some characters can become corrupted in a sense, you know, and when you have a contract, you know, with particular talent agencies, you're very protective of that, and Japan looks like it is. So if no agreement is made, Lost Judgment could be the final entry in the franchise, or the next game could have a different protagonist, although that's just my very own conjecture on it. It's not necessarily
Sure.
So yeah, there you go. And Death Stranding's director's cut is not actually a director's cut, says Kojima. The Death Stranding director's cut was recently announced, bringing some discussion about the use of the director cut label, much like Ghost of Tsushima director's cut.
Yeah.
Some Twitter users decry that since Kojima was the one creating the game and called all the shots, that there should not be a director's cut because, you know, why would you cut your own stuff?
Yeah.
Kojima has come out and stated, and I quote, "A director's cut in a movie is an additional edit to a shortened version that was either released reluctantly because the director did not have the right to edit it, or because the running time had to be shortened. In the game, it is not what was cut, but what was additionally produced that was included." Director's plus? So in my opinion, I don't like to call it director's cut. It turns out that Kojima did not choose the name for director's cut, obviously. But that also brings an interesting argument about the use of director's cut.
Yeah, which is already sort of a vague term.
It is, yeah, but it's mostly used for kind of, say, auteurs. Like,
yeah, I mean, there's that. There's also,
like, director's cut really shouldn't be used unless the director is, like, very well known, you know?
In a perfect world, yes.
Yeah,
but
right.
I'm sure there are a lot of movies out there that get re-released and director's cut slapped on them because it's a way to resell a new Blu-ray or something like that. And then there's like, Apocalypse Now, which has like 16 different edits. And so there's like a billion different director's cuts. Yeah, I think because the theory of the art tour is already complicated enough when it comes to movies, with video games, it's even more complicated. I'm not a fan. Like, usually I don't care about debates with semantics, you know?
And this is exactly that.
But this is one case where I'm okay with it, because I think it's something that just doesn't fit video games at all, Yeah,
right, absolutely. Like, and I bring this up not to diminish the work that they've put in, but I don't know who the director of Ghost of Tsushima is, but
not off the top of my head,
but Last of Us directors
and game
Neil
directors
Druckmann,
are important.
They are.
I'm not saying they're not important.
Are.
Sure,
but we do know Neil Druckmann. We know Cory Barlog. We know Hideo Kojima. And but yeah, Ghost of Tsushima couldn't tell you. Spider-Man couldn't tell you. Ratchet and Clank. Nope.
I think it's just in movies, there's a cultural acceptance, whether or not it's a myth, that decisions and vision comes down to one person, right? So David Lynch, it's like, that's David Lynch's, vision or whatever.
Yeah.
Games, there's so many more people working on it. Artists, coders, stuff like that.
Yeah. So many more people.
I think it's harder to pin the vision onto one person, right? Which is why I think the term just doesn't really fit.
Yeah, it doesn't
and
stick.
And the reason it's being used is because it's something that people intuitively understand. Like, oh, this means there's more stuff, right? Just like if it was Death Stranding Complete Edition or what have you. So,
right.
Yeah.
Which I guess we would prefer that, like Complete Edition or
something else.
Upgraded Edition or something.
Yep.
Moving on to NPDs.
Hooray!
NPDs, once again, are provided by Matt Piscatella over on Twitter. You can follow him for monthly numbers on video game sales. So let's get started. June 2021 consumer spending across video game hardware, content, and accessories grew 5% when compared to a year ago, totaling $4.9 billion.
Okay.
First half of 2021 consumer spending reached $28.9 billion, a 15% increase when compared to the same period in 2020.
That's surprising.
That is very surprising.
What was the narrative? Narrative was everyone's at home.
Yeah.
Everyone's buying games.
Yeah, because they got nothing better to do.
But now people got stuff better to do, but everyone's still at home buying games.
Right, yeah. And once again, we were worried about, how the numbers would differ from pandemic to now. Yeah, which
I was.
You could argue that we're still we are still in the midst of a pandemic, but people are now free to leave the home more so than they were last year. Right, yes.
That's something you can't argue. Pandemic, sure. Lockdown, that's not what we're on.
There, of course, is also the argument to be made that people have rediscovered video games during this last year.
Which is interesting.
It is very interesting. Hardware was the growth driver in June. Hardware dollar sales increased 112% when compared to a year ago, as PlayStation, Switch, and Xbox consoles all gained sales this month. June video game hardware dollar sales jumped 112% when compared to June 2020 to $401 million. This is the highest total achieved in a June month since 2008, $617 million. Wow.
Good Lord.
I like my brain, when I was compiling this all together, my brain skipped over that.
You just kind of glazed it, yeah?
Yeah. Year-to-date hardware consumer spending has increased 45% compared to 2020's first half to $2.3 billion. Xbox Series collection of consoles was the best-selling hardware platform in dollar sales for the month of June.
Well, oh, really?
Yeah.
Surprising.
It is surprising. They seem to be pumping them out faster than PlayStation is.
Yeah.
So, while Nintendo Switch led in unit sales, of course.
Okay, never mind. Yep, that makes more sense.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say, more Xboxes sold than Switches? That's crazy. Units sold,
They got a number one somewhere, though.
Yes, yeah.
June dollar sales of Xbox consoles set a new record for the Xbox platform, besting the previous high set in June 2011. Once again, Nintendo Switch was the best-selling hardware platform during 2021's first half in both dollar and unit sales. PS5 remains the fastest unit-selling console hardware platform in U.S. history. Lifetime sales through 8 months in market, excluding portables. So that's not including handhelds. It's just consoles. Fastest selling in the 8 months in market. Yeah.
They've only released like 7 of them, and it's still the. Oh, okay, whatever.
Hey, I don't.
And you have
numbers.
one.
I know. Yeah, I do have one. I was lucky though. Very lucky. Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart debuted as June's best-selling game, achieving the highest launch month dollar sales of any title in the franchise history. Launch month dollar sales more than doubled those of the previous high set by Ratchet & Clank in April 2016. That is also interesting because, once again, who has a PS5?
Yeah.
And out of people who have a PS5, who's buying Ratchet & Clank?
I guess everyone.
I mean, people are hungry for games, I guess.
Yeah.
Mario Golf Super Rush launched as the third best-selling game of June 2021. Launch month dollar sales were the highest ever achieved by a Mario Golf game. Previous high was set by Mario Golf Toadstool Tour, which launched for the Nintendo GameCube in July 2003.
Whoa.
A long time.
Going back.
I think there's been 3 Mario Golf games. Anyways, Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1+2 jumped from number 51 in May to ranked 17th on the June's best-selling titles chart. The Switch version of the game was released in the U.S. during the month, accounting for most of the gains. June release of A Pirate's Life for Sea of Thieves.
Yep.
Content update helped push Sea of Thieves up from 36th a month ago back to the top 20 bestsellers chart. Sea of Thieves originally launched in March 2018. I'm going to highlight a couple of things from the top 20 best-selling here. Number 1 through 5 would be Ratchet & Clank, a new entry for the month. Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War, up from number 4. So it was number 4 last month. Now it's back up to number 2 again. Mario Golf Super Rush was the new entry. MLB The Show 21, down from 3 of last month. And Scarlet Nexus at number 5, which is a new entry. Resident Evil Village dropped down to number 6 from number 1 of last month. And then here's interesting. I always like to point this out because I'm trying to force people to understand who will listen to me. You're not going to stop Nintendo. Nintendo's going to keep selling.
Nope.
And number 7, we have Mario Kart 8, a game that was released in 2014, and it's still in the top 20 best-selling games of the month. I know it re-released on Switch, but over 35 million sold. Animal Crossing New Horizons is at number 11. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate is at number 13. Mario 3D World is at number 15. And Zelda Breath of the Wild is at number 18. All of these do not have their digital sales counted. These are just physical. So if Nintendo were to give out the digital sales numbers, these would probably be higher.
Yeah. And this is, I guess that's the thing with consoles, right? Because you sell a console on a slim margin, you probably make a loss.
Yeah.
But the idea is apps.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
That's the idea, apps.
Software.
And so if you have killer apps, then that's where you make your money.
Yeah.
And Nintendo has tons of killer apps.
They got tons
At least
of
they have tons
yes,
of
sir.
selling apps.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Oh, I forgot. Number 19 was Pokemon Sword and Shield.
Oh.
I missed that one. Excuse me. On here's some more trivia tidbits. The top 10 best-selling games on the Nintendo Switch. 9 of the top 10 best
of all time.
Sorry, for this month.
For
this last month in June. 9 of the top 10 best-selling Nintendo games on the Nintendo Switch are from Nintendo themselves.
Yeah. Yep.
The 10th was Minecraft. Of course. But once again, Nintendo's a behemoth when it comes to the sales. So.
And that goes back to the Steam Deck.
Yeah.
It's like the Steam Deck cannot compete there.
No, it can't.
Because it's not selling any of those, minus Minecraft. The other 9 games, it's not selling any of those.
No, it is not.
So it can't compete there.
Right.
And
So-
if that's where they're making their bread and butter, then...
Right, exactly. And with Steam Deck, it's not even in the peripherals of Nintendo owners, or users. So that's what it is. June 2021 spending on video game accessories fell 1% compared to a year ago to $207 million. First half accessory sales reached $1.2 billion, an increase of 14% when compared to the same period last year. Sony's DualSense wireless controller, the Midnight Black version, the new black controller that came out, was the best-selling accessory of June 2021, while the DualSense wireless controller White led in first half sales. 3 of the top 4 best-selling accessories of June were DualSense wireless controllers. And lastly, just 2 pieces of NPD trivia. And these are great. The NPD group tracked 20,790 individual game items across hardware, software, accessories, and gift cards that sold at least 1 unit in June 2021. the oldest game to sell at least one new unit in the month. Sorry, hold on.
So say that one more time.
Okay. The NPD group tracked 20,790 individual video game items across hardware, software, accessories, and gift cards. I assume that's what the GC means.
Okay.
So like Roblox, Fortnite,
Sure.
blah, blah, blah. That at least sold one unit in June of 2021.
Okay.
Okay. So that was that sense. This is a separate.
Sure.
The oldest game to sell at least one unit in the month of June was Brain Age for the Nintendo DS, which came out in April of 2006. So that game sold at least one new copy.
Somewhere
last
and it was
month.
a physical copy.
It was a physical copy.
Good
yes.
Lord.
Yes.
Man. You know what? As like, if you're in the store in that moment, it's such a, it just happens and doesn't matter, you know?
I think of that Squidward meme. Brave, aren't we?
Yeah, exactly. Like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, I would give anything to know where and interview this person. So you bought so why did you do this? Like, why did you get Brain Age? Like, what was going on? Like, I would love to know about this.
It was an older.
If it was you, tell us.
Email us.
Yeah.
So the last piece of trivia is the Game Boy Advance and this is relating to the PS5 fastest selling info. The Game Boy Advance is the only hardware platform in U.S. history that sold more units over its first 8 months in the market than the PS5 has.
Okay.
So although PS5 is the fastest selling console, GBA is the fastest selling hardware platform in general in the first 8 months.
Okay.
And that is it for the MPDs.
Thank you. That was good.
Yeah,
It's always good.
I
It's always
love
fascinating.
MPDs. I love MPDs.
Yes.
Give me them numbers into my veins.
Okay, follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Gaming Discourse. Go to our YouTube channel, YouTube/Gaming Discourse. Go check out the Claire de Lune review. And we will be back next week.
Bye.
Bye-bye.